A few years ago, I was sitting across from a woman at dinner. She was stunning, sharp, funny, everything on paper. But halfway through the evening, I realized I was no longer leaning in. I was pulling back, not because of how she looked or what she said, but because of something deeper. She was trying too hard to be chosen instead of just being herself. And here's what hit me that night. It's not beauty that holds a man's attention. It's not success. It's energy, class, presence. A sense of self that says, I know who I am and I'm not auditioning for your approval. So tonight, I don't want to talk about tricks or tactics. I want to talk about moves of true class, the kind of moves that don't chase, but attract. Not the kind that make a man obsessed for a weekend, but the kind that make the right man rise and stay. Let's break down 5 of those moves sown by one. I've seen it over and over again. People, especially women, trading their peace for the illusion of connection. They say yes when they want to say no. They entertain chaos just to avoid loneliness. They contort themselves into something more pleasing, more palatable, more acceptable. And in doing that, they don't just lose time, they lose themselves. You have to understand, the moment you begin compromising your peace for someone else's approval, you enter a transaction where you're always in debt. That's not generosity, that's self-abandonment. And nothing, not a relationship, not a job, not even love should cost you your sense of inner calm. I remember working with a woman who was wildly capable, emotionally intelligent, driven, loving, but every time she got involved with a man, she shrunk. She'd ignore red flags, silence her instincts, overextend herself just to keep the peace. She wasn't choosing connection, she was choosing comfort, and that comfort was killing her ability to grow. She thought she was being loving. What she was really doing was leaking power. Protecting your peace doesn't mean being cold. It means being wise. It means filtering what enters your world, not because you're superior, but because you're strategic. You understand that your energy is currency. Where you invest it determines what kind of life you're building. A peaceful life is not passive. It is intentional. It's the result of saying, this chaos is not mine to carry. You want to attract the right people? Start by walking away from the wrong energy, without explanation, without guilt, without delay. Because when you protect your peace, you don't just avoid toxicity, you create space for real, grounded, mutual connection to grow. And in the long run, that's worth more than being liked. One of the clearest signs that someone respects themselves is their ability to say no without apology, not with anger, not with guilt, just clarity. I've seen so many people, especially women, struggle with this simple but powerful word. They fear that no will make them seem unkind, ungrateful, or even unlovable. So they say yes again and again until their time, their energy, and their identity are owned by everyone but themselves. When I was younger, I took on far too many obligations out of guilt. Invitations I didn't want, projects I didn't believe in, people who drained me. And I told myself it was the right thing to do, that it made me good or selfless. But it didn't. It made me resentful because every time I said yes to someone else at the expense of my own priorities, I said no to my own potential. There's a quiet strength in someone who can say no and mean it not to be rebellious, but to be responsible. Responsible for their peace, their time, their vision. It's not selfishness, it's stewardship. I once worked with a client who was burning out, running herself into the ground, trying to make everyone happy. When I asked her why she didn't push back, she said, I don't want to be difficult. But here's the truth. Boundaries don't make you difficult. They make you trustworthy. They let people know exactly where you stand. They teach others how to respect you because you've already decided to respect yourself. Every no is a yes to something higher, your growth, your health, your mission. And if someone walks away because you honored that, let them walk. Your life is not an open audition. You don't need to apologize for protecting what you've worked hard to build. There's a dangerous misconception floating around that vulnerability means spilling everything to be seen, that the faster you share, the deeper the connection will feel. But that's not intimacy, that's exposure. And exposure without discernment is not a strength. It's a defense mechanism, usually born out of fear of being overlooked, misunderstood, or left behind. I've had people sit across from me in moments of real pain, telling me everything within the first few minutes: childhood, trauma, toxic relationships, private struggles. And I've listened not because I asked for it, but because they needed to unload. But here's what they often don't realize. Connection isn't something you earn by oversharing. It's something you build through mutual presence, safety, and time. I once coached someone sharp, kind, emotionally available, but every date she went on, she treated like a therapy session. She thought if she could just be completely transparent, if she told them everything early on, they'd finally get her. But what it did instead was overwhelm the process. It removed the pacing that allows two people to actually grow into connection. There's no depth without mystery and no value in giving away what hasn't yet been earned. And look, I'm not suggesting dishonesty. I'm suggesting discipline. You don't open the vault for someone who hasn't proven they know how to handle the key. That's not being guarded. That's being wise. Your story is sacred. Don't turn it into currency you spend just to feel accepted, because the people who are worth knowing, really worth knowing, won't need your whole life on day one. They'll earn your truth over time. And they'll respect you more for knowing it's worth waiting for. There's something about a person, especially a woman, who doesn't need to explain herself to be understood. You walk into a room and there's a stillness about her. She's not trying to win anyone over, not performing, not rushing to list her accolades or defend her past. She's just there, grounded, composed, whole, and you feel it. That's what I mean by presence speaking louder than words. In my early academic career, I used to believe I had to prove my intellect in every room. I would talk fast, quote books, analyze endlessly until someone I deeply respected told me, "Jordan, people already know you're smart. Why are you working so hard to convince them?" That hit me. I realized that the people with the greatest impact rarely say the most. They simply embody what they know. We live in a culture obsessed with declarations bios, speeches, social media posts that scream identity. But the truth is, your energy always tells the story before your words do. A calm, focused presence speaks of self-trust. Eye contact, posture, silence in the right places, it all communicates more powerfully than 1,000 clever sentences ever could. I've coached women who were so desperate to be seen that they talked themselves out of their own mystery. They led with their resume, their pain, their opinions all in an effort to be liked when all they needed was to be still. You don't prove your worth by announcing it. You confirm it by living it. And when your energy is clean, when it's not begging, forcing, or performing, it draws people in without a word. Because the right person doesn't fall for noise. They're drawn to signal. And your presence, when rooted in who you are, is the clearest signal of all. There's a critical distinction that most people never learn. Caring for someone doesn't mean chasing them. And when you confuse the two, you end up abandoning yourself in the name of love. That's not noble. That's self-sabotage. I've seen it countless times, people overextending, over-texting, bending their values, all under the illusion that they're being invested. But it's not investment if it empties you. It's not care if it costs you your dignity. What you're doing isn't building a bond, you're trying to buy one. I once spoke with a woman who said, "I just want him to see how much I care." She was always the one initiating, over-delivering, emotionally laboring. And the more she gave, the more he withdrew. Why? Because desperation doesn't attract commitment, it repels it. What she didn't realize is that genuine care, when rooted in self-worth, is calm. It's offered, not pushed. You can express interest, share warmth, offer presence, but the moment you have to chase it, you've crossed the line from connection to pursuit. When I was younger, I thought effort was everything. That if you just worked harder, gave more, people would value you more. But people don't respect effort that comes from fear. They respect energy that's chosen wisely. The kind that says, I care about you, but I will not abandon myself to be close to you. You must hold the tension of giving without grasping. Love without losing yourself. Engage fully, but never beg. When your care comes from wholeness, it doesn't scream, it doesn't plead, it simply shows up and steps back when it's not met. Because if you have to chase someone to keep them, you'll have to keep chasing to feel worthy. And nothing about that is love. Conflict is inevitable. What defines you isn't whether it happens, it's how you respond when it does. Emotional maturity in conflict doesn't mean suppressing your feelings or pretending you're unaffected. It means staying rooted in who you are while honoring the tension between two people. It's choosing to remain composed when your ego wants to explode. And that's no small task. I remember early in my marriage, I used to think the goal of a disagreement was to win. I was precise, articulate, armed with logic. But what I learned painfully over time was that being right means nothing if it leaves the other person feeling small, dismissed, or unseen. I had to learn to trade victory for understanding, precision for presence. Emotional maturity means recognizing that your tone matters more than your argument. That silence shouldn't be used to punish, and volume doesn't make your point more valid. It means speaking truth without cruelty, expressing hurt without humiliation. It means asking yourself not just what you want to say, but why you want to say it and whether your intent is to connect or control. I've worked with clients who grew up in homes where emotion equaled chaos. So they learned to avoid conflict at all costs. But what they needed to learn was that conflict, handled with maturity, is not the end of connection. It's the pathway to deeper understanding. The key is not to fight less, is to fight better with care, with clarity, with a commitment to resolution instead of retaliation. Because in any meaningful relationship, you're going to disagree. That's a given. The real test is whether you can stay kind when it's hard, whether you can protect the relationship even when you feel wounded. And that choice, repeated, is what builds trust that lasts. Chemistry is intoxicating. It's that magnetic pull, the electric spark, the feeling that someone just gets you. And because it feels so rare, people often assume it must mean something deep, something lasting. But the truth is, chemistry is not a sign of compatibility. It's a sign of attraction, and that's not the same thing. I've met countless people who said, but we had such a strong connection, while describing relationships that left them anxious, depleted, or constantly guessing. What they were calling connection was often just familiarity. Sometimes your nervous system is reacting to patterns, not to possibility, especially if you're used to chaos being mistaken for passion. Years ago, I worked with a man who had intense chemistry with a woman he described as the one. The highs were euphoric, the lows unbearable. Every conversation was charged. But what he couldn't see was that beneath the passion, their values were misaligned. They communicated poorly. They didn't want the same things. He was mistaking emotional intensity for emotional safety, and it cost him years of confusion. Compatibility, on the other hand, is quiet, is grounded. It's found in mutual respect, shared values, and the ability to weather difficulty without destroying one another. It's not about the spark, it's about the substance that sustains the flame over time. It might not always feel like fireworks, but it will feel like peace. And that peace is far more rare. So when you feel that rush, that surge of chemistry pause, look deeper. Ask if the other person's life, habits, and character align with the one you're trying to build. Because if you build a future on chemistry alone, you'll spend your life trying to stabilize what should have been secure from the start. Attraction starts the fire, but alignment is what keeps it burning. One of the most powerful things you can ever do in life or in love is walk away calmly when something no longer aligns with your values. Not in anger, not in bitterness, but in clarity. That's not weakness. That's strength under control. It's the quiet assertion of someone who knows their worth so deeply, they don't need chaos to prove it. I've sat across from people who were stuck in relationships that drained the life out of them. They kept showing up, explaining, pleading, trying to fix something that was never built on mutual respect. And when I asked them what they were afraid of, they always said the same thing: I don't want to be alone. But here's the reality: if your fear of being alone is greater than your commitment to being respected, you'll always settle for less. There was a time in my own life when I kept holding on to a professional relationship that was clearly past its expiration. I thought I could reason my way through it, hold things together by being indispensable. But no matter how much I gave, the respect never followed. And the day I chose to walk without a dramatic speech, without a final warning, I felt something I hadn't in years: peace. Because peace isn't found in avoiding endings, it's found in choosing alignment. The willingness to walk doesn't make you cold, it makes you precise. It means you're not here to beg for effort or trade your time for potential. You're here to build a life that reflects your values, and that includes surrounding yourself with people who recognize your value without being convinced. Sometimes the most dignified move is not to fight harder, but to walk away quieter. Love is not meant to complete you. That idea, romantic as it sounds, is a dangerous myth. Because the moment you enter a relationship from a place of emptiness, you turn love into a transaction. You start looking for someone to fill the void, to patch the holes in your self-worth, to give you an identity instead of reflecting one you've already built. And that creates a dependency that looks like connection, but is really just survival. I've worked with people, brilliant, capable people, who kept attracting the wrong partners. Not because they lacked value, but because they didn't believe they had it on their own. They believed love would finally validate them. And when that love didn't come, or worse, came in unhealthy forms, they felt unworthy. Not because they were, but because they hadn't anchored themselves in wholeness first. There was a point in my life where I believed my usefulness to others made me lovable. The more I solved, the more I carried, the more I gave, the more I believed I'd be safe. But I learned, slowly and painfully, that giving from a place of emptiness only invites relationships that take without giving back. You don't get rewarded for overextending. You get worn out. Wholeness means you're not waiting to be rescued. It means you don't enter love hoping to be saved. You enter it knowing you're already standing on solid ground. You offer affection, support, presence, but not at the cost of yourself. And when you love from that place, your relationships become a choice, not a need. You can care deeply without clinging. You can give without fear. And you can walk away, if needed, without falling apart. Because when love is built from overflow, not scarcity, it doesn't ask, will you complete me? It says, can we grow together from where we already stand? One of the greatest differentiators between those who build lasting wealth emotionally, spiritually, and materially, and those who constantly feel behind is this: intentionality. It's the discipline to act with vision, not just reaction. Because when you live on impulse, you trade long-term gain for short-term relief. You say yes to things that feel good in the moment, but sabotage you in the long run. I've seen this in relationships, in business, and in personal habits. I once worked with a young man who was brilliant, but every decision he made was reactive. If he felt lonely, he reached out to someone toxic. If he felt bored, he made impulsive financial choices. He was living in emotional debt, constantly trying to solve discomfort without considering consequence. And what he didn't realize was that every impulsive decision was compounding not just in his bank account, but in his sense of self-respect. Living with intention means you pause, you think, you ask, does this move me closer to who I want to be? That's not rigidity. That's clarity. It means you choose your relationships with discernment. You spend your time and energy like they're assets because they are. You don't confuse movement with progress or desire with direction. There was a point in my own life where I had to stop asking what feels good right now and start asking what builds the future I say I want. That shift changed everything. My work, my boundaries, even the people I let close to me. Impulse says, just this once won't matter. Intention says, every step matters because I matter. Because when you live with intention, you stop running in circle sand, start building something that lasts. The truth is, class isn't about status, appearance, or how many people admire you. It's about how deeply you respect yourself when no one's watching. It's in the way you walk away from chaos without needing to announce it. It's in how you protect your peace, hold your standards, and speak with purpose rather than performance. You don't chase to be chosen, you choose. You don't overshare to feel seen, you reveal when trust is earned. And you don't fall for potential, you align with character. A woman who lives this way isn't just attractive, she's unforgettable. Because she isn't offering a performance, she's offering presence. And the right man will recognize that not as a challenge to conquer, but a standard to rise to. So if you want to be pursued for the right reasons, stop trying to be impressive. Start being intentional. Let your boundaries teach people how to treat you. Let your energy speak where words fall short. And above all, remember this, when you know your value, you don't have to convince anyone else to. You become the one who is chosen be, the people who are ready to meet you where you already stand.